Hi, and welcome to another video on object-oriented programming in C#. With me, Marinas Toman. Okay, so for this video we're going to look at for loops. A for loop is just another type of iteration that is available in C#. So when would we use a for loop? So when you know exactly how many times you want the loop to execute for, then this is when we would use a for loop. So a while loop will be used, or a do while loop, when you potentially don't know how many times the loop needs to be run. So let's say, for example, you're showing a user a menu and you want to keep showing it until they press some key. So you don't know many times that they're going to actually want to see that menu, so that would be a while or a do while loop. So you keep looping the code until some condition is met that breaks the loop. So the for loop, basically, if we know exactly how many times we want, so let's say we were trying to loop through all the students in a class, we know that there's maybe 50 students, so we know that the loop is going to need to run 50 times. So the for loop is what we use for this. So this is the general syntax. So it starts with the for keyword, then we open our brackets, and we have three statements that are separated by a semicolon inside the brackets. So within the curly braces then is just all of our code that has to be executed. So these statements are very similar to the while loop. So the first statement, it's executed just one time before the execution. Statement 2 defines the condition for executing, so this middle one is basically your condition that will break the loop. And statement 3, this is executed every time after the block has been executed. So statement 3 will, this is evaluated once, this is the condition that is going to be tested every time to see will the loop run again, and then the statement is basically what's the very last thing that's executed at the end of when the for loop's finished executing. So we look at an example here. This is probably familiar enough to you. So what we normally do is we declare a new integer, and we usually call it I for index. So one of the good things about a for loop is when we're looping through arrays, so this is really shorthand just for index of an array. So we initialize the variable I to be equal to 0, and we want to keep running the loop while I is less than 5, and every time the loop has run we want to increment I by 1. So you can see where this for loop is a lot safer than the while loop, because it forces you to put in, it forces you to increment your counter in the statement, in the loop statement. So it gets you to create the counter and increment the counter all in the same line, and then also you need to, or it's always good to have the counter in the condition itself that'll break the loop. Okay, so just explaining these quickly again. So it just statement 1 here declares a new integer called I and it sets it to 0. Statement 2 defines a condition for the loop to run, so I must be less than 5. So this is going to, the same before, it's going to print the numbers from 0 to 4. If the condition is true, the loop will start over again. If it's false, the loop will end. And statement 3 increases the value of I each time the code block has been executed. So this is pretty bog standard. Every time you see a for loop, you're going to see, usually it's going to be I, like I say, for index. But you can name this whatever you want. I know we always say about descriptive variables, but this variable, as soon as this for loop stops executing, this variable is deleted anyway. So it doesn't have any scope, or it can't be seen outside this for loop. So that's okay. We know what it's just basically a counter, so we don't need to really give it a descriptive name. Okay, so just looking at another example. So in this, what we were doing is just incrementing I by 1. So in this example, what we could do is we could increment it by 2. So as you can see, you know, we could also do the shorthand, which would be I plus equals 2. Or this is just the longhand. So at this time it's going to go until it's 10. So because we have the less than equals, so whenever I is equal to 10, it's still going to run. So this is going to print from 0 to 10. So that's pretty straightforward. Loops can be nested as well, like most statements in C#. So as you can see here, we could have an outer loop, as it's known, and you know, we declare, we initialize our new variable, we set the condition, and then this time you can see we're pre-incrementing. So this is basically incremented, the pre-incrementation that's explained in another video. So this is down here, we're only going to execute whenever j is less than or equals to 3. So this is going to execute, this one's only going to execute 2 times because it's going from 1 to less than or equal to 2, so it's going to be 1, 2. And then this is going to be 3 times that this executes, but because it's an inner loop and this one executes twice, so this has to be multiplied by 2 basically. So that's running 3 times, but that 3 times is running twice, so this will actually execute 6 times. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the for loop. Yeah, we can have nested loops, the same as you can have nested while loops, nested if statements, nested switches. You know, most statements we can nest in C#. So when the for loop's really handy when we know how many times that we want the loop to execute for. This other type of loop, what's known as a for each loop. So this is basically, it's exclusively for looping through elements in an array. So when we were talking about here before, setting the I equals 0, and I being the index of an array, and what we would normally do is we would have I less than the length of the array, you know, so that you're not indexing something that is outside of the bounds of the array. But the for each loop, what this does is basically this stops us going out of bounds. So it's just really for going through arrays. So the syntax here would be for each, and then we declare the type of variable that we have, and we give it a variable name. So this is basically the same as in the for loop, creating our int I equals 0, but this we're doing say int I in and then the array name. So it's basically search every element in whichever array. So we look at an example of that. So here we've got a string array called chars, and it's just got 4 strings in it. So what we could do is for each string I in chars, so we know that the type, each variable that we're going to be, or each element of the array that we're going to loop through, we know that we're going to find a string in there. So we're just, this is our string I in, and then just our list of chars. So your type, your variable name, and then your in keyword, and then array name. So in this example, what's going to happen is, because we don't have a counter, it's just going to loop through every element that's in the array, and then it won't go outside of bounds. So because we're not counting the index, you know, we're not going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just looping through exactly the number of elements in the array, and then that's it, finishing. So for each is really good for that, because we don't need to, you know, we don't need to start declaring variables, putting our condition, and then incrementing. What we do is we just say for every variable in this array, and then, you know, we can give it this temporary name, so then we can refer to it inside the block of code. But again, this I variable, once this for each loop is finished executing, this I variable dies along with the the execution of the code. Okay, so again, the scope is only within the loop. And if we go back to Microsoft as well, so that's pretty much everything for for loops and the for each loop. And if you want a bit more, you know, in-depth reading or a bit more knowledge about it, you can go over to Microsoft themselves, and they can tell you exactly everything that you need to know about the for loop, different examples using it, and then of course the for each loop, and again a load of different examples here of how to use it. And of course, you know, you can run these examples as well in the browser, and you can see your output here, so you can start playing around with things. Let's say for each number in fib numbers, and then let's say that num we try to use it outside the loop. So it's just going to say, what are you talking about? This doesn't exist in the current context. Okay, so like I say, I would always try and play around with these things, try and break it. You know, breaking it is going to be the best way that you can understand how it works. Okay, so that's everything for this video. Okay, so that's everything for the video. Thanks for watching.